Hello Internet, it's time for Reviews Without Fear, Part 2, Daredevil issues 9 through 15, Volume 2 of course. There's a bit of a smattering with the creative team here. For the most part, it's Mac writing, Quesada on art. However, there are some breaks, and I will address that as the review progresses. So let's get to it and jump into Parts of a Whole. As we jump into this comic, we see Daredevil mourning the loss of his past lover, of course, and in it we have this beautiful sequence in which he's playing the piano and it's talking about his perspective of the world, and how through music it's one of the closest things he has to sight in a way, which that part is always played in different ways. But they have this great sequence where each note lands a different memory, and throughout the page he's dancing around boxing, bringing that whole fighting aspect from his father. It's just so great to see this culmination of all these aspects of the character coming together, and why in every aspect he's pursuing justice. Like, it's this whole that he's in himself that he's just trying to complete by going about and being Hell's Kitchen's guardian. It's really a big part of Marvel at this time was every comic is someone's first comic. I think that idea has been lost, and maybe to some real-world perspective now. Next, we have a very similar sequence that introduces us to Maya Lopez, who is the conflict for this entire arc. She is deaf in the way Matt is blind. She is unable to hear people speak, but she's able to lip read what people say. So she can't use the phone, but as long as you're facing her, you can talk to her. And she also has a very Taskmaster-esque ability in which she is able to watch people do something maybe once or twice or whatever, but quickly pick it up and then master it. And for that, she's almost more superhuman than Matt Murdock is. And at this point, I want to make a note about the art and the text that's used throughout this issue. It's a very great device, and what it is you have Quesada's art at some parts, and then it's juxtaposed with this crayon art that's all put on lined paper, very much like a child would do. And these parts are juxtaposed with high-level thought versus very gut reactions. And from it you get this idea of a duality of thought. Sometimes, I mean, if someone's lying or saying something different, you can pick up on it because of the way these are conflicting. Here's where the plot thickens. We find that Maya has been supported by Kingpin ever since her father's death. And when we're first introduced to their connection, Kingpin's been following her to a boxing match and then a piano recital, and she can hear his thunderous hands clap. Okay, here goes. Kingpin's so fat that when he cut himself shaving, marshmallow fluff comes out. No? Well, when the Kingpin had his high school yearbook photo taken, he had to have it done from an aerial shot. Tough room. Well, when the Kingpin steps on a scale, it says, please, one at a time. Well, how about, you're such an arrogant, evil guy, you think you can walk over everyone in this entire city. Murder! And that recital is brought to you by Ultimate Spider-Man Volume 2, Learning Curve, as written by Brian Michael Bendis, who also does a good chunk of this Daredevil arc coming up, but enough of that tangent. Anyways, Kingpin goes to talk to Maya, and he requests for her to go talk to Matt Murdock and give him a couple papers about something. She knows he has like a bazillion lawyers as Wilson Fisk, not even as the Kingpin, but it's just bizarre that she doesn't really question this act. And I mean, I understand that she's a little indebted to him, that not really a big deal, but still she goes ahead and does it. And Matt, of course, meets this woman, despite knowing that Wilson Fisk, and he knows that's the Kingpin, sent her. He still ends up becoming romantically involved, because he's a player! Something about the name Matt. After an initial meeting takes place between Matt and Maya, we find that Kingpin is showing her through one picture where Daredevil's caught with a gun, which obviously was doctored or whatnot, that this golden gun is the gun that Daredevil used to kill her father, which is of course a lie. The Kingpin killed her father. We all know this. But she becomes very angry at Daredevil and wants to kill him now. And so the seeds are set for further along in this arc. However, what bugs me about this is that it's fairly well known that characters like Daredevil and Spider-Man don't kill. Even in continuity, as like when a crook gets caught, they know that Daredevil or Spider-Man isn't going to kill them. That's part of the interaction. And as such, I figure after so many crooks go around, if you're tied to anywhere near the underworld, you'd know this. And, I mean, even from reports in the Bugle and all, it's not like Spider-Man killed, or the couple of times that he does. It's very rare and usually retracted, even in the papers. That this idea that Daredevil killed her father isn't questioned at all, and really raises a lot of question of how the characters are perceived. And to me, that's a failing of this story, in the fact that these characters need to be perceived in a certain way, and if they're not perceived that way by the public, that takes a whole new dynamic with their character. Now, Maya is gearing up to kill Daredevil, and she's crafting this bit of a persona called Echo, in which she takes on some of her Indian ancestry and puts a hand mark on her face via paint, which is very visceral and interesting. But beforehand, she goes on a date with Matt, which is nice to see Matt for once romance the ladies instead of just... And it's great to see, and it's juxtaposed with what she was doing prior and how she was watching all these movies and training up to become this deadly assassin. What's bizarre, though, is she watches tapes of Daredevil and Bullseye, and she's able to master Bullseye's aim, which I thought was a supernatural element, so it seems odd to me that she'd be able to duplicate that by watching. Just something that they specifically point out Taskmaster can't do. He can only cover moves that would be handled, A, within his frame, which they mentioned she can only do, but also that he can't do anything, like he can't magically project things or do supernatural movements, or he can, but only at great stress to his body. And the fact that she's able to just pick this up seems odd. And as soon as Echo and Daredevil start their conflict, the arc breaks into a single issue called Gunplay, in which you see them kind of tussle a little, and then it goes into these three separate slice-of-life events with non-characters, essentially, that all collide. There's a carjacking guy who wants to commit suicide, and a little more crime, and we learn about how horrible the city is, and it ends with one little poignant bit to the Daredevil universe. The only escape from Hell's Kitchen usually comes unexpectedly, and then the bubble leads you to an ash shot, and then down, from the barrel of a loaded gun, in which you see Echo carrying the gun that killed her father, because apparently she needs to kill Daredevil with that. Hooray. And then exit interlude back to the normal cast, in which normally we have Mac writing and Quesada doing the art chores for this art. But for this issue, Quesada wrote, and they brought on Pamalotti to do most of the art, and he was doing inking on and off for this arc. And so it's just kind of interesting to see the cast just bump up and then bump down. Next, we see a big trial in which Foggy Nelson tries to bring down the Kingpin in the court of law, because that's gonna work. And the Kingpin gets off, but the trial was about, he had a very low employee, a janitor, in which he did actually try to hire to kill someone, but in fact he did try to hire the twin of this said employee, and because of some misaltercations, when this twin went to get help from Matt Murdock, he was sniped in the office. This took place earlier, and blah blah blah. But anyways, the twin is all sad that his brother died, and it's weird because these guys, when they talk, it's just like a string of words and it's translated usually later, so it's like, wow, okay, are they Cajun? And so this twin shoots the Kingpin a number of times, and the Kingpin gets off and then falls off one of the many bridges in Marvel that people fall off of. Because if you're going to go out in Marvel, you're going out over a bridge. But we do see Kingpin come back, and then he struggles up through the sewers back to his rightful place, which is kind of, at the time, reminiscent of the fact that they're reflecting on how he came up through, essentially, finding ways to control power. And you see this, and it's very much about how he comes back, not the fact that he simply does. Now, there's a great action sequence that comes around where, in one tussle, Echo finds out that Daredevil is, in fact, blind. Now, she did this by trying to blind him, so later she more effectively blinds him by forcing him to fight her over a fire, which is brilliant because the idea is that the smoke cancels out his heightened smell, and then the crackling fire essentially ruins all of his super hearing because he's hearing so much roaring and crackling of fire that he can only take in brief bits. So it's just a great little fight sequence, and any sort of heightened action with a little bit of cerebral idea without, you know, power levels and da-da-da is always so great to see. So it was awesome to have that sequence, and man, if I could act it out for you guys, I would, but my pyrotechnics budget, kind of small. In the middle of this tussle, though, Echo finds out that Daredevil is in fact Matt Murdock because of a cut that she discovered earlier in the date where he has a cut like a question mark in a particular area. And from that, she knows that Daredevil didn't kill her father because she knows how old Matt is, and he would have been in grade school at the time her father was killed. And obviously Daredevil wasn't around. And so, although why didn't she put this together earlier? Anyways, so she knows immediately that it's Kingpin, and she goes to strike him down. And in doing so, she shoots him point blank in the face, and instead of dying, Kingpin is blinded. And I don't need to point out the connections there. To the point of justice in this arc, it's really interesting to see these 3 points converge. First, we have Daredevil, who just instinctively, obviously, needs to try to find justice either in court or on the streets, just due to the way that he operates, and this is what he does. Second, because of the way the arc plays out, we see Kingpin's idea of justice and the fact that the only way to find the right way is to be selfish and do it for yourself, to seize power and do what's right for you, and that is all, and do whatever you need to get ahead. And for that, justice is sought on him. Now, the unusual part here is actually Echo, Maya, where she needs to go out, and for the most part, she's trying to live a peaceful life despite the fact of what happened in her past, and she's trying to move on. But when it comes to the specific point of who is personally responsible for her father's death, she needs justice, she needs revenge, and she does everything in her power to enact it. But beyond that, she doesn't have any motivation to go out and do anything unto others. She just wants to live her life. Which is interesting because that's such a great way to portray a character, and having these people brought in, I think, adds so much more because it creates a different idea of why does Daredevil need to go out and be Daredevil, be Hell's Kitchen savior time in and time out. What's interesting about that juxtaposition is from here we get the no-death point. As Daredevil, he is usually third party and able to see that an eye for an eye is not the just way. It's not doing anything, though the fact that it is equal. And for Maya, it's about enacting what was done onto the person who caused her and her family so much pain. And for that, you get this sense of vigilante justice for what it is versus the way it's portrayed in Marvel. So that's kind of what I thought, but I hope you guys enjoyed the second Reviews Without Fear, and another one will come along when I find time to do these, because these take a lot more time than just a quick comic review. So questions, comments, death threats, down in the doobly-doo, and until next time, peace, love, and a pint.